In-laws tossed out a single black mom and her son. A passing millionaire had other plans. Some people think power is inherited, worn like a suit or sealed in bloodlines. But what happens when the ones with no voice find the strength to rise? When silence is broken, not with vengeance, but with clarity. This is a story about a woman left to die in the desert, and how she turned that moment into a movement. What the Pattersons didn't realize was, you can't bury the truth in the sand. It always finds its way out. Before we start the story, write in the comments from which part of the world you're watching today. No one hears screaming in the desert. There's only the wind, the hiss of heat, and the silence of complicity. Amara didn't see the blow coming. One moment she was holding her son's hand in the back seat of the luxury SUV, his head drooping with fever and exhaustion. The next, she was on her knees in the sand, blood in her mouth, her breath stolen by the impact. Her skin, already sticky from the heat, now burned from rough contact with gravel. Behind her, the doors slammed. The SUV sped off, leaving a cloud of dust in its wake. She couldn't move at first, not because of the pain, though that was real and spreading, but because of the sound her son made, a whimper, small and wet, like a wounded animal trying not to be noticed. "Nathan," she rasped, crawling toward him. His cheeks were flushed deep red, his eyelids heavy. She pressed her hand to his forehead. He was burning up. They had left him without water, without medication, without mercy. 2 hours earlier, they were still at the estate. She remembered the heat not from the sun, but from Eleanor Patterson's eyes. Cold heat, the kind that doesn't burn the skin, it scorches the soul. "You need to understand," Eleanor had said, her voice coated in false politeness. "This is about what's best for Nathan. You're unstable, unfit, and frankly, no judge will side with someone like you." Amara had stood her ground. "David wanted me to raise him. You can't just erase that." Eleanor's lip curled. "You think a dead man's wishes matter?" They called it a relocation, a visit to talk things over. The driver wasn't one of their usual staff. The moment she saw the black duffel in the trunk, filled not with clothes but with random scattered items from her home, she felt the shift. Too late. The man driving hadn't spoken, not when she protested, not when Nathan started to cry, not even when she begged. They'd gone farther and farther from Phoenix, and then, somewhere off a dirt road surrounded by nothing but cacti and sky, they'd stopped. That was when it happened. The strike, the silence, the abandonment. Back in the present, she crawled toward a shade patch, a meager spot beneath a rock outcropping. Her body screamed in protest. Her right wrist was twisted. Walking was impossible. She couldn't think, only react. Protect Nathan. By some miracle, she found her phone. Dead. It had been left in her bag on purpose. A cruel, final detail. Time bled out under the sun. Nathan was slipping. His small hand lay limp in hers. His lips cracked. She whispered stories to him between her own cries. Stories about his father, about strength, about how this wasn't the end. It was supposed to be the end. But then came the sound. Faint, foreign. A low rumble. A truck engine. She pulled herself halfway up, waving a torn shirt. Her vision blurred, but the truck slowed. A man stepped out, middle-aged, sharp-suited despite the dust. "What the hell?" Amara couldn't speak. She just pointed at Nathan. The man acted fast. He lifted the boy with careful hands, wrapping him in his jacket. Then he looked at her. Really looked. What happened? She tried to answer, but the words caught in her throat. He didn't press. He didn't ask if she was telling the truth. He didn't doubt. He just said, "Let's get you out of here." She didn't know it yet, but that man, Marcus Reynolds, was going to change everything. As the truck bumped down the dirt path toward civilization, Amara looked back once. The dust was already settling, as though nothing had happened. But it had, and the desert would remember. Marcus Reynolds was not supposed to be there. His assistant had messed up the route to the industrial site he was touring, and his navigation system had frozen an hour back. Frustrated and sweating through his linen shirt, he had almost turned back, until he saw the figure on the road. At first, it didn't register as human. The desert plays tricks with the eyes, but as the truck crept closer, the outline became horrifyingly clear. A woman, barefoot, limping, and beside her, a child who wasn't moving. By the time he braked, she had already collapsed. Now, just under 40 minutes later, Marcus sat in the ER waiting room of a small rural hospital in Gila Bend, hands still shaking from adrenaline. He had told the nurse everything he knew, which wasn't much. No IDs, no working phone, no personal items except a torn handbag with nothing but a child's drawing inside. A house with a tree and stick figures. A smiling man in a blue suit labeled Dad. Marcus watched the doors. He had lived through market crashes, boardroom betrayals, lawsuits, and once even a plane crash landing. But nothing had felt like this, like standing in the middle of someone else's crisis and realizing you're the only witness. A nurse finally approached. "She's stable, dehydrated, bruised ribs, twisted wrist. The boy, he's lucky you found him when you did. Another hour." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Marcus nodded. "Can I see them?" "In a few minutes. She's asking for you." He didn't ask why. He simply followed. The room was small, the kind used for overflow patients, but it was cool and quiet. Amara was lying back, a monitor beeping softly beside her. Nathan slept on a second gurney, an IV in his arm, cheeks flushed but improving. Amara turned to Marcus as he entered. Her eyes, clearer now, studied him in silence. "I didn't catch your name," she said hoarsely. "Marcus. Marcus Reynolds." "Why did you stop?" He shrugged, awkward. "It would have taken a heartless man not to." "You don't know how many of those I've met?" He didn't answer. She continued. "They left us there, his family, his mother, Eleanor, his uncle, Richard, after my husband died. They changed." "Your husband?" "David Patterson. Maybe you've heard of them." Marcus blinked. He had. The Pattersons were old money, tied up in aerospace and Arizona politics. The name was whispered in the halls of elite circles with reverence and just a hint of fear. That family was power, reputation, and iron control. "You married into that?" he asked. "Not by choice. I married David. I didn't realize he'd chained himself to wolves." She paused, then added, "They want my son. Not for love, for name, for blood, and to erase me." Her voice cracked, but her eyes didn't. They held on to something else, something steady and terrifying. Marcus sat down beside her. "Do you have proof of what they did?" "They took everything, but I know them, and they underestimated what a mother remembers." The next day, The hospital reluctantly discharged them. Marcus had offered to pay for a longer stay, but Amara insisted on leaving. Staying put made them easy targets. She'd seen how the Pattersons moved. Quiet threats, legal traps, people bought with cold smiles and expensive watches. Marcus didn't press. Instead, he did something else. He made a call. In his contact list was the name Zoe Washington, a tenacious civil rights attorney he'd met at a conference in Chicago. Smart, driven, and ruthless when she needed to be. When Zoe answered, her voice was clipped. "If this isn't life or death, hang up." "It's both," Marcus said. By evening, they were in a modest safe house in Tucson, owned by one of Marcus's companies. Clean, sparse, and above all, off-grid. Amara stood by the window, staring at the horizon. The sun dipped below the cacti, painting the sky blood orange. "They think I'm alone," she said. Marcus glanced over from the table where he was setting up takeout. "You're not. They'll come after me anyway, with lawyers, with lies, maybe worse. That's why I called Zoe. You'll have backup." Amara turned slowly. "Why are you doing this?" He didn't answer right away. "My sister. She died 6 years ago. Domestic violence. No one believed her. Not until it was too late. I couldn't save her. But I can help you." They stood in silence, the moment heavy but shared. Then Nathan stirred on the couch, his first full meal in 2 days, sitting half-finished in front of him. Amara knelt beside him, brushing hair from his forehead. "I'm here, baby. I'm right here." And in that small, silent act, Marcus saw it. The unbreakable tether between mother and child. The force the Pattersons had miscalculated. They thought they'd buried her in the sand. They didn't realize they'd planted something instead. The moment Zoe Washington stepped into the safe house, the air changed. She was barely above average height, dressed simply, black slacks, white shirt, hair pulled into a tight bun. But everything about her said control, precision, fire held in check. Her greeting to Marcus was curt, a nod. To Amara, more formal. "Let's start with what we know," she said, not wasting a second. "Tell me everything from the night David died." Amara hesitated, not because she didn't remember, she remembered too well, but because speaking it aloud felt like handing over a wound that still bled. But she spoke. David had been sick. He never told his family, not really. It was pancreatic cancer. By the time he was ready to fight, it was already stage 4. We spent most of those months shielding Nathan, pretending we had time. Zoe didn't interrupt, only listened. After the funeral, Eleanor changed. She didn't cry. She just started organizing things. First David's accounts, then his office, then Nathan's schedule, like she was taking inventory. "Did David leave a will?" Zoe asked. "Yes. He left everything to Nathan, with me as legal guardian. But a week after the funeral, Eleanor claimed she had a revised copy. I never saw it. I wasn't even allowed in the lawyer's office." "Did you try to challenge it?" "I tried. But their lawyer, Fletcher, made sure no one would take my calls. Then someone broke into my apartment, took my laptop, old letters, documents. I knew who it was, but I couldn't prove it." Marcus leaned forward. "They isolated her. That's why they waited until she was most vulnerable." Zoe nodded. Classic power play. Erase the support system, then crush the target. I've seen it before, but we're going to flip that script. She stood and opened her briefcase, placing a slim folder on the table. "This is Fletcher," she said. I've dealt with him before. Arrogant but not reckless. He'll try to file for emergency guardianship citing negligence. We need to move before that happens. Amara spoke quietly. They're already making the move. Zoe raised an eyebrow. I still have a contact. Carmen Diaz. She was our housekeeper for years. She was in the room when Richard Patterson screamed that I was just a temporary nuisance. I think she heard more than she ever let on. Zoe smiled for the first time. Not warmly, strategically. Good. A housekeeper is invisible until she isn't. Get her to talk and we might have a crack. The next morning, Amara made the call. Carmen answered after 2 rings. Her voice trembled. Señora Amara, Dios mío, are you all right? They said you ran off. I didn't run, Amara said. They left me in the desert, Carmen. A pause, then a gasp. They told everyone you were having an episode, that you threatened Nathan. Tears welled in Amara's eyes, not from hurt. There was no time for that, but from fury. Carmen, I need your help. I need to prove what they are. Silence. Then quietly, I kept a copy of the security footage from that day. When you were taken, I didn't know why, but I kept it. Hope, sharp and sudden, pierced through Amara's chest. Can you get it to me? Yes, but they're watching me now. Zoe took the phone. Carmen, my name is Zoe Washington. We'll arrange a safe way for you to get us the footage. But you have to be sure. Carmen's voice cracked. They hurt people. If I stay quiet, I'm no better than them. 3 days later, Zoe had what she needed. The footage was blurry but damning. Amara being dragged from the car, Nathan sobbing in the back seat, Eleanor's voice in the background saying, "Leave her. The boy will adapt." Zoe locked it in a secure drive and turned to Amara. This is good, but we need more. Amara had already started digging. She went through what little she had left. Fragments, photos, handwritten notes David had left tucked into books. One stood out. An envelope marked, "For later, if something goes wrong." Inside was a letter. Handwritten. David's voice poured out from the page. "If you're reading this, I didn't win. I'm sorry, love. I know what my family is capable of. If they try to separate you and Nathan, show them this. You are his mother, and they cannot erase that." He had attached a flash drive. On it, his original will, the one naming Amara sole guardian. Zoe whistled softly. This isn't just evidence, it's motive. They must have realized he didn't file the revision they claimed. So they forged one and tried to eliminate the only person who could prove otherwise. Amara's voice was steady. Then we go after them. Zoe nodded. It's time. That night, Marcus brought in a second lawyer, a specialist in wills and estate fraud, a quiet man named Deshawn, with a photographic memory and a talent for legal traps. He spent 6 hours reviewing the footage, David's letter, and the digital metadata on the will. They forged it, he confirmed. Sloppy work, too. The file was created after David's death but backdated. I can prove it in court. Zoe stood in the center of the room. Then this is how we do it. We file preemptively. We bring charges of attempted custodial interference, document fraud, and conspiracy. We drag their name through court before they even know we've surfaced. And Eleanor? Amara asked. Zoe's expression hardened. She won't go down easy. She'll hire a PR team, bury us in motions, maybe even try to intimidate Carmen. But if we control the narrative, if we're the ones who strike first, they'll be scrambling. Amara looked at Nathan, asleep again in the next room. I want them to know I survived. I want them to see me in court, and I want them to know I'm not afraid anymore. Marcus smiled. Then let's give them something to fear. It was raining the morning the hearing began, not the soft kind of rain that cools the skin and smells like clean pavement, but a heavy, gray downpour that soaked through coats, shoes, and nerves. A rare storm for Arizona. Zoe said it was a good omen. The courtroom was a mix of polished mahogany and cold marble, elegant, impersonal, designed to hold stories, but not feel them. Amara sat at the plaintiff's table, flanked by Zoe and Deshawn. She wore a modest navy dress and no jewelry, every detail thought through. Marcus sat a row behind her, his phone off, his posture still. Nathan, too young to attend the first hearing, was safe with a counselor nearby. Across the aisle sat Eleanor and Richard Patterson. She hadn't changed. Sharp hair, immaculate cream suit, expression frozen somewhere between disdain and boredom. Her brother, Richard, looked more frayed, fidgeting with his cufflinks, jaw clenched tight. And beside them, Thomas Fletcher. He wore a confident half-smile, like this was just another procedural bump to flatten. The judge entered, the room stood, and the trial began. Zoe opened with the facts. In the wake of David Patterson's death, the defendants, his immediate family, sought to unlawfully assume custody of Nathan Patterson, violating the decedent's legally binding testament and attempting to erase the rights of his mother, Amara Jenkins. This was not grief. This was greed. Her tone never rose, but it filled the room. They claimed a revised will. They claimed she was unstable. But today, we bring proof of forgery, of coercion, and of a conspiracy to steal a child. Fletcher objected. Inflammatory. The judge held up a hand. Let her speak. Zoe continued. You will see digital evidence, you will hear testimony. But more than that, you will hear the voices they tried to silence. The defense countered with theatrics. Fletcher painted Amara as erratic, emotionally unstable after David's death. He cited episodes, unfounded accusations, implied substance issues without naming any. She disappeared for days, he said, with a child, no contact, no explanation. Is this the behavior of a fit parent? Amara clenched her jaw. Then Zoe rose, calm as ever. She disappeared because she was left in the desert by the very people sitting across from us. She paused. We have video evidence. From the Pattersons' own property, it shows the moment Amara was forcibly removed from the car. It captures Eleanor Patterson's voice, giving the order. The judge turned. You have this video? Zoe nodded. Admitted into evidence as Exhibit A. She played it. The room stilled. The grainy footage flickered to life. Amara crawling through sand. Nathan crying. Eleanor's voice cold and unmistakable. Leave her. The boy will adapt. Fletcher stood to object, but the judge didn't look at him. When it ended, the silence was deafening. Next came Carmen Diaz. She took the stand trembling, eyes darting toward Eleanor, but Zoe stood close. Miss Diaz, how long did you work for the Pattersons? 14 years. And during that time, did you witness any mistreatment toward Amara Jenkins? Carmen nodded. After Mr. David died, they started saying she was a mistake, that she wouldn't last long. Did you hear any mention of forging documents? Carmen swallowed hard. Yes, Mr. Richard said if the boy stays with her, they lose everything, that they'd fix the paperwork. Fletcher didn't object. He was scribbling furiously. When Carmen stepped down, Amara mouthed, "Thank you." Carmen nodded, wiping her eyes. Then Zoe dropped the final weight. Deshawn presented digital metadata from the revised will. It was created 6 days after David Patterson's death, he said, then modified with backdated properties. Is this common? The judge asked. No, Your Honor, it's criminal, and it was sloppy. Whoever did it didn't know we'd trace file lineage. That was when everything began to shift. Fletcher stood. Your Honor, I request a recess to confer with my clients. The judge agreed, but before they rose, Zoe asked one final motion. Your Honor, I would like to call Nathan Patterson. The room reacted. Audible gasps, scribbled notes from reporters, a sharp inhale from Eleanor. Fletcher objected. Absolutely not. The child is 7. He requested to speak, Zoe said. He has a statement. The judge frowned. This is unusual, but if the child is willing... Nathan walked into the courtroom holding a stuffed bear in one hand and the counselor's fingers in the other. Amara didn't cry. She smiled. Zoe knelt beside him before the judge. Do you understand why you're here, Nathan? Yes, he said clearly. And you want to say something? He nodded. They said my mom was sick, but she's not. She's brave. She held me in the desert when I was hot and scared. And she didn't cry. Not even when she was bleeding. She said we'd be okay. That we just had to wait for the right person to come. He looked toward Marcus, and he came. Then he looked at Eleanor. There was no hatred in his eyes, only confusion. I thought you loved me, but you wanted me without my mom, and I don't want that. The courtroom was dead silent. Even Fletcher lowered his eyes. By the next day, the narrative had changed completely. The Pattersons were no longer the respectable philanthropists. They were headline material for the wrong reasons. Desert abandonment case expands into estate fraud scandal. Fletcher, cornered, requested a private meeting with the judge. Afterward, he approached Zoe. I'll cooperate in exchange for immunity. Zoe didn't blink. You'll testify to the forgery? Yes, I did it under orders. And you'll turn over internal communications? I already have, Zoe nodded. Then your immunity is conditional. Full transparency. No games. He agreed. Eleanor and Richard Patterson were arrested within the week. Charges, custodial interference, conspiracy to commit fraud, and attempted endangerment of a minor. Bail denied. After the hearing, Amara stepped into the sunlight with Nathan's hand in hers. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashed, but she didn't speak to the crowd. She turned to Zoe. You didn't just win a case. You gave us back our lives. Zoe smiled. You won it. I just made the mirror. Amara turned to Marcus. Thank you for stopping. I didn't stop, he said. I arrived. They stood, not in triumph, but in quiet resolve. The desert had tried to erase her, but now her voice echoed in the halls of justice. And this time, it would not be silenced. The house where Amara had once been forbidden to speak too loudly now echoed with the voices of women reclaiming their own. The Patterson estate had been auctioned to cover legal damages and unpaid taxes. its marble floors and pristine columns stripped of illusion. With help from Marcus and Zoe, Amara purchased it through a non-profit trust. A place built to intimidate was now a sanctuary. They called it the Phoenix House. 2 years had passed since the trial. Time hadn't erased the pain, but it had layered over it something harder, finer, purpose. The center held free legal clinics twice a week, therapy sessions for survivors of domestic violence, a full childcare wing. Former victims now stood at the head of classrooms, guiding others through housing rights, self-defense, trauma recovery. One hallway was lined with photographs, not mugshots, not courtroom sketches, but portraits. Smiling, dignified. Women and children the center had helped. Nathan's photo was near the front, taken during his 8th birthday celebration. In it, he was holding a model of the solar system and wearing a t-shirt that read, "I belong to no one but love." Amara adjusted the mic at the front of the lecture room. The space had once been the Pattersons' ballroom. Now it was filled with university students, activists, and survivors. Her topic today, law as a tool of restoration. "I want to start with a letter," she said, holding up a laminated page. This was written by Eleanor Patterson while awaiting sentencing. She read aloud, "I did what I thought was right. Bloodlines matter. Legacy matters. She wasn't one of us." Amara looked up. She never admitted guilt. Never said the word, sorry. To her, justice was a threat. She thought losing power was worse than doing harm. She folded the letter. "But this isn't a story about punishment. It's about what we build from the wreckage." She told them about Carmen, who now ran a shelter in Tucson, about Zoe, who had started a national network for at-risk mothers facing custody threats, about Fletcher, once a predator in a suit, who now taught legal ethics at a community college. His classroom wall hung with one quote, "You cannot serve the law if you've never feared its misuse." She told them about Marcus, who stood at the back of the room, listening with the quiet pride of someone who'd chosen the right turn on the wrong road. And she told them about Nathan. That evening, Amara sat in the garden behind the center. The desert air was cooler now. Orange, violet, and deep pink streaked across the sky. Nathan joined her, dusty from a day of science projects and running through the cacti maze one of the volunteers had helped him build. "Did you tell them the story again?" he asked. She smiled. "Only part of it." He sat beside her. "I remember the sand, but not much else." "That's a blessing," she said quietly. He looked at her, thoughtful. "Did it make you stronger?" She thought for a long moment. "No, not surviving. What made me stronger was choosing what to do after." The lights inside the center flicked on. Volunteers were cleaning up. A child laughed. Someone played soft piano from the old music room. Marcus came out and wrapped a light shawl over her shoulders. "Another full house," he said. Amara nodded. "We're going to need a bigger wing." They sat together in silence, watching as dusk settled over the desert. The same desert that had once tried to claim them. It hadn't. Because they had built something new. Not in spite of the pain, but with it. Before closing the center that night, Amara walked through the gallery one last time. She stopped beneath a framed quote at the entrance, something she'd written on a scrap of paper the morning after the trial, and now kept etched in every new case, every lecture, every rescued life. "True strength is not what we survive, but what we build from the ruins." And under that, in her handwriting, AJ. She turned out the lights, stepped into the evening, and walked toward the future. Not away from the past, but ahead of it. The story wasn't over. It had only just begun.